going back to the Foxtrot debacle, did they reach back out to you after they got back on their feet?
They did. Yeah.
Did they settle their debts?
No.
Yeah. I Am Consciously Curious, a podcast for those that are searching for meaning and fulfillment in their lives. My name is Victor Chan, and I'm on a mission to find out why people do what they do. I've interviewed white-collar to blue-collar, entrepreneurs to passion projects, and life is just too short to not produce meaningful work. Thanks for tuning in. We're live. Miss Amie Kesler, welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
So good to see you again. I feel like I met you before the point I'm about to mention, but I can't remember it.
Okay.
And so the point that comes to mind is right immediately after the Foxtrot debacle, and you were at Publican.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And just like trying to do some research and to see all the wins that you've had along the way, and the growth in this process, but to see you still giving out samples like on the sidewalks, and I think after that I saw you at the Pizza Fest, with the Pomodoro, and you're killing it. You're all over the place.
Thank you. I mean, it's like so good to hear. I mean, there's always so much to do, and like,
where is your time best utilized?
Yeah, and I think it's funny. People are like, I mean, I'm honored when people are like, I see you everywhere. Like your stuff's here, there, you're at these events. I'm like, that means a lot because it means hopefully we're doing something right.
Yeah. So how would you describe the era of your journey at the moment?
So right now, we're going to our 4th year, which is huge.
Yeah.
I am in this phase of working smarter and really, like, I think when I started, I was like, I'm going to do all these events.
Bootstrap a lot of things, right?
We're self-funded, bootstrapped, like hardcore. And I can be scrappy. I can hustle. And like, you need that. You have to have that starting anything. But I am at this point where I really have some big growth plans, and it's like, okay, how are we going to make these happen?
Yeah.
And how are we going to do it smart? How are we going to do it like sustainably, to the point where, companies can grow too fast. And if you don't do it the right way, like you don't make it. And I think that is like a reality that, small businesses think about, but like I have been very lucky that we didn't need to think, we've just been really...
You're not trying to cut corners.
No, yeah. And there's, being bootstrapped, it's a slower sustained growth. And it's a little more incremental than you see these venture capital, some funded companies that can just jump,
Yes.
But I think with Foxtrot, it's a good example that sometimes, I don't think venture capital is bad, but I do think that sometimes the vision gets a little lost and it can be like a detriment. So I just want to like keep our vision. I want to make our big leaps, but I want to do it smart. And so I'm just really trying to hone in on how to do that and building that plan. So I've been thinking a lot of it about like a puzzle, like this whole like life journey, but like business journey of taking all these parts and trying to, like, you zone in and you zone out and you keep,
Do you have a clear picture of what that puzzle could look like at the end?
I do. It's definitely evolving.
Yeah.
But it's, I don't know. And maybe it's not as traditional as like, we're going to go in all these grocery stores and then we're going to sell and make it. Like, that's, it's a little more complex than that in my head because I love people. I love talking to our customers.
And this vessel right now is allowing you to do that.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting what selling this at a certain point would allow you then to do.
So I like big picture is I want to be able to give back to entrepreneurs and particularly women entrepreneurs. So even from like my hiring practices right now, I really try to work with people who might not have the same opportunities that I've been given or other people I know have been given and train and mentor them to grow. And I've really tried to ingrain that into a lot of our hiring, but I want to do that on a bigger scale. And so, say if we sell in the next 10 years or so, I want to be able to do that on like larger, and I want to do it as we grow too, but that's
interesting.
This like
so become more of more of a personal brand or like a mentor or a coach? Like, because I feel you can do that right now, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah. And I do, as much as I can. But I think when you have even finances to back it, and you can like financially support someone in a dream or funding of their business, and being able to like share my experience of like the full picture too. I'm excited to do that.
A mental block that reminded me of for myself is when I left the fire department as a paramedic, and due to making an hourly rate that did not afford me a dog walker for my 2 dogs, and I'd be tied up for 24 hours. And at the time, I was also teaching, and it was actually covering more of my bills or all of my bills, and the paramedic role was just a way to gain experiences. And so I made the decision to leave, and you start teaching something you're no longer a part of, and imposter syndrome sets in. And so I wonder, but like at that point, you've done it all. So I wonder if imposter syndrome would have set in at all for you.
I feel like imposter syndromes are always there.
Yeah.
In a weird, like a weird context, no matter, I don't know, I've listened to a lot of other podcasts, I've heard a lot of people speak. Some people don't have, I don't know, some people don't have it. More people
delusional confidence.
Love that. Good for them. Solid. I can't say that's true for me. But I just think that any level, you're kind of like, I don't know. I think it's maybe an ego balance too at a certain way, but you just also can't let it tear you down too far, because then that's where you don't do anything, right? And you don't make the moves.
Right. And that's actually how the podcast was born, because it was an excuse to chat with other industry professionals. And then I came full circle, and obviously I'm still doing that. I'm still teaching this, and it's a reframe in perspective in leaning into things that you at least mildly enjoyed at the time, and you think about what would allow me to fully enjoy this. And it was a difference in environment that changed that for me, but also remembering that there are people of all walks of life that enter this space seeking to become EMTs, and you have something that they want, and you can help get them there. And so it was simply a reframe for me, and that imposter syndrome dissipated a little bit, but I also don't do a lot of the teaching these days. I ensure a smooth process and a great customer journey, and I let the instructors do the teaching. So it's been great.
Yeah, it shifts, right? Like,
yeah.
And then, I don't know, for me, it's, I will have very strong imposter syndrome at certain times. And then, like, I did this last year. Was it last year? No, the year before. I hate public speaking.
Oh, wow. Here you are.
And I was like, I am going to work through this.
Okay.
And I did so many pitch contests.
Okay.
And I was on panels, and I got so nervous every time. And I can't say like I would do it, when it comes up again, or right now, like I feel fine.
Yeah.
But there is something about doing something a lot and it getting more like normal.
100%. And
improving and kind of being okay with that process.
Yeah.
And being like, not going to be perfect the first time, but I'll take a little bit of that and do better the next time.
It doesn't really go away. I talked with someone, and she and I were supposed to, we had a lot of mutual friends, and I was going to this artist goodbye party at the Ambassador. I don't know if MK is listening, but MK. And I was there very shortly, and me and my wife had dinner reservations, and she was like, "Before you go, I want you to meet someone." And I look at that person, and he's surrounded by 5 other people, and this whole like, this isn't the right time. Like, I feel like I'm not worthy enough to like interject myself, and I would just feel rude. And so the girl I was talking to, she was like, "How do you get over like public? How do you get through the anxiety to as someone who has met so many people and is used to public speaking?" It's like I don't think you ever get over it. And a one-on-one setting is a lot easier than a group setting, for sure. Totally. And that feeling of, am I worthy to be in this room, is still there, for sure. Yeah. Totally. And if I were to go even one step more deeper, it's creating something of value that it has become a magnet for other people to come and want to be here. So it's less of me like, can I talk to you? And more like, can I talk to you? And it's like, it's interesting how like that has flipped, and it's made it easier for me, but I try not to use it as a crutch as well.
Totally.
So with that, like, I'm sure there was a life before cookie crisps.
Yeah.
Cookie crackers, right? It's
Yeah.
like you were an art director.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like
No.
how long were you doing that for?
So I feel like I've lived many lives, especially in Chicago, which is interesting. I am originally from North Carolina, but I've been in Chicago for a while. But I was art directing for like 7 years, almost 8 probably. The most recent prior to the Krisps was I was working for a insure tech company. So a pet insurance company.
Oh.
They were a startup. It was funny because, you kind of go through I don't know, I've done this a lot, but I go through all the kind of positions I've had and like the different jobs I've taken on, and they've all been startup in some capacity.
Okay.
So, and I was always drawn to that. Like, I love that you can build it from nothing.
Yeah.
You really get like a lot of autonomy.
Yeah. Are you wearing many hats?
Oh my God. Yeah. For sure.
So then your actions are very impactful. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You don't get lost in the weeds.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah. And when it gets like too, there's too many steps, or, there's a lot of people controlling stuff. Like I'm like, I don't know. It gets a lot for me, and takes some of the magic away. In a certain
very
sense.
Bureaucratic.
Totally.
Yeah.
So I was working, for that company for a while. I was on and off freelancing, and then I went full time, and then I actually went back to freelance. But the day I left was the day before everything shut down.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I was like, I'm freelancing from home. I'll see you guys later. I'll talk to you soon. And then everyone was at home after that for a really long time. So that was kind of funny. Yeah. So I did art direction for them and brand building. And then prior to that, I was doing art direction for a retail company actually in Wisconsin.
Oh, interesting. So my next question was going to be what vessel? To me, I'm traditionally thinking paintings, like galleries and things like that, or museums, right? But you were doing it for companies.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So like the retail company, I was doing like big in-store signings. So if you think about like holiday season at Target, kind of, we would do all of that for all of the stores.
Okay. So you always had an eye for aesthetics.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I went to school for marketing PR.
Oh, very cool.
Went back to school for graphic design.
Okay.
I was working for a publisher, and I was managing the publication, but I wanted to do like the actual design and understand how to do that. So I went back and learned the skills to be able to like actually do stuff on a computer. But I've always been very much just like making things with my hands.
So with the shelving and the design, do you also try to add on, like, as someone navigates the aisles, of like what's their journey like, or what are their experiences like, and why Target positions certain things in the front, middle, and back?
Totally. Like wayfinding, how are you finding your way through the store?
Yeah.
Are you able to see it from like one side of the store to get over there? I mean, we did everything, which is actually helpful now.
Right? It all has led to this.
Yeah. So it's a different perspective. So when someone's like, we need shelf talkers, I'm like, I got you. Like, yeah, I know what those are.
Okay.
Yeah.
So pandemic happened, and then you were just doing this at home, or were you making this for friends or like corporate parties, or?
So I lived in Wisconsin for 3 years.
Wow, you've been all over.
Kind of.
Because your personal feed is like international too.
Yeah, I do love to travel.
Tell me about it. It's awesome.
I mean, I think inspiration from other cultures opens my heart, honestly.
Okay.
So I'm all about some new experiences and, trying out new things. But I was in Wisconsin.
Okay.
We had a potluck. They were like, I was talking to my mom, and she was like, I need to bring something, but I don't have much time, and she's like, oh, you should bring the cheddar crisps that Granny used to make. Like, we would make them with her.
Okay.
But I hadn't made them on my own since she had passed away. And I was like, oh, I think I could do that. And so I made them, took them, and people were like going crazy. Like, Wisconsin's like the cheese state, like they were very excited. And I had so many people asking for the recipe, and I was like, I don't know. Like, I think, I was like, I don't know if I want to give this away yet. Like, and it's something, and people just kept asking. And then I was making art. Like I had another kind of, my art company was called Fluorescent City at the time. And it was more like textile based and like painting with all bright fluorescent colors. But there were times where I was working full time. I was doing freelance design. I was doing my art, and I would have art shows with like friends in Wisconsin, and I wouldn't have time to actually like make an art piece.
Okay.
So I would make snacks.
Oh, wow.
And I would bring them.
Oh.
And I would be like, food's art, you guys. Like, and I would sell them.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it kind of started there. But then I took a break. Like, it just wasn't. I knew in my head, I was like, I'm going to get a business plan. I'm going to make this happen.
Oh, wow.
But at the time, it wasn't right.
So that's very early that you had the seed for the entrepreneurial journey through these Krisps.
Totally.
When you first made it on your own, or like when was that seed planted?
So, I mean, this was 10 years ago, 2014.
Okay. Oh, wow. Yeah.
When I was like, there'll be a business. It's not going to be a business right now.
Yeah.
But it'll be something.
Yes.
And so I kind of just put it in like my back pocket for a while. And then left Wisconsin, quit my job, traveled for a while, went to Iceland for like a soul searching journey.
Yeah.
It was great.
Did it work? Did you find yourself?
It was fun. It was a deep dive. It was really good.
The last guest did a lot of solo traveling too, in Europe and in Asia. And she's like, I'm like, you're not afraid? Like, is it a safety thing? She's like, no, you might be alone, but you're never alone.
You're never alone.
Right?
You're never alone. That was like the biggest thing. Like, you can always, be safe, right?
Yeah,
but totally. Like, there's somebody to talk to. There's people around all the time. And if you don't want to talk to anyone, that's fine too.
Yeah. You can go to any restaurant you want to go to any museum you want to go to. Yeah.
Totally. No, I love it. It is. It is fun to have someone with you too. So I can't complain there. But yeah, you're not alone. That's very accurate.
Yeah. So, tell me, like, where went like that seed? Like, you were traveling, like, when did that seed get planted?
Traveled, came back, started designing again, art directing.
Okay.
I had another business. I was a sustainable fashion business with a business partner.
Oh.
That ended up being very short-lived. Totally fine.
What kind of wearables?
We were taking like fabrics and giving them new life.
Yeah,
so like any dead stock, or we would go to like thrift shops, and we were doing one-off, like very high-end, like beaded, painted pieces. And we did like our launch was, so we launched in January of 2020.
Yeah.
And then we did a Walk the City fashion show in Chicago. So we went on the trains and had 10 of our friends
is so cool.
in our clothes. And we had like these climate signs, because everything was about like reuse and like kind of waste that we have with clothing and fashion. So we had like facts on different signs. And we started in Logan Square. We went all the way downtown and ended up at Millennium Park.
Very cool.
And so we had different stops, and friends would come out, and people were, obviously watching us and
amazing.
Marching around the city. So that was really, that was.
How far did that get?
So we ended up, and then the pandemic hit.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a shame.
So it was short-lived. Business partner relationships can be complicated too. So yeah, we kind of just ended up dissolving that. We ended up making masks by hand. I think we made over 500, 600 masks by hand, and we're working with local businesses to donate them.
Yeah.
And the hospitals. So that was actually, the pandemic honestly was really busy because we were doing all this stuff. And then I ended up, so we were also roommates at the time, which is a whole nother thing.
Okay.
But anyway, I ended up moving out. And something in me was like, the Krisps. They got to come back. They got to come back. And none of us had left the city for a long time. And we had some friends in upstate New York, and they invited us to drive out, a friend and I. And we were like, okay, cool. And I was like, I'm going to make the Krisps. Like, we got a road trip, And I was tinkering with them because before they were not necessarily gluten-free or vegan.
Okay.
And I was very much more going down my like vegan gluten-free journey, and I can't have soy, so I was doing the soy-free thing too. And I was like, I'm just gonna see if they can be like all the things. And so I got all the ingredients, I made them and took them up to upstate New York, and I was having all of our friends try them, and they were like, I don't know what you did, but these are better than before.
So they've had the original.
They had the original, yeah.
What percentage do you think they're similar to the original?
They're definitely, that's a good question.
Despite being all the things. Right?
Yeah. Percentage is hard. They're not far from it.
Okay.
I think there's like maybe like a 15% like crispiness more now than there was. Because like when you use regular cheese and butter, it's like a little more oily.
Okay.
So these, have a, like are a little more crispiness to them.
Interesting.
They hold up a little bit better for like longevity. And that's purely just because of our ingredients. We're not adding anything to that. But yeah, so.
That's amazing.
And then I came back from that trip and I was like, I'm going to get a website. We're going to start doing this. And within a week I like built, like I was like, it was crazy. Like this like energy just like took over me. And I was like, okay, like let's go.
And was that a lot due to the positive feedback you received?
Yeah. And like, people were always asking for them. Like when I even wasn't making them, I had a contact who was out in DC. She like worked in the political sphere. She was gluten-free. So I was actually making her special gluten-free crisps and sending them in mason jars to DC. Like, and I was like, sure, like, I'll make them, but I wasn't like pursuing anything at that point. So yeah, there was just a lot of, they got asked, like people inquired a lot. There was a demand. I was also really looking at what was on the market, and there's a lot of crackers, there's a lot of cookies, and I just like couldn't find anything that satisfied me. And so I was like, well, I'm gonna like, this makes sense. Like and at the time there was not as many vegan or gluten-free options.
Sure.
The market's changed for the better.
Yeah. But
I still think we stand out from like taste, texture, all of that.
When I first read the label, I'm like, cookie crackers for the curious. That's very fitting.
I'm curious.
Yeah, I was like, this is great.
Shout out to Mia from Andale Market, by the way.
Mia?
She helped me with that.
Really?
Tagline,
I haven't met Mia yet, but
awesome.
I've heard great things. I think from Polita.
Yeah. They were our first retailer.
Okay. Wow. Andersonville, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you're also in Fresh Time, and I pick you up from Agora.
Oh, thank you. I love them. They're great. So supportive.
So, you made a website.
Yeah. Made a website. I knew how to make websites.
Exactly, right? So you're kind of incorporating your art experience into this.
Yeah.
Graphic design. It's not too far off.
Yeah. Which is like, that's the stuff I love.
And it's now for your own thing.
Yeah. Like that. Sometimes it's harder though. Honestly, it's harder to design for yourself.
Is it because you're a tough critic? Or?
Yeah, and you're so close.
Okay.
So I definitely. I mean, it's saved me a lot of money in the end of not having to hire like a firm yet.
Yeah.
But like it's tough. You are so, and you're critical, and people see you like I know everything, but I'm like, you got to really step in the other people's shoes.
At that time, can you still fall back on the cottage food license? Like you weren't selling online, it's like ask for forgiveness type thing, but like
everything's legal now.
What I'm trying to say is like a lot of startups they just create hurdles for themselves before starting, right? And it sounds like you've already been iterating and testing and getting feedback, and you're ready to like make things official. Yeah,
totally. Yeah, and I think. I mean, maybe naivety. Like I didn't know, and I was just like, cool, we'll do this. And the cottage food was also, because it was like, that changed at one point, I think in the pandemic world. Yeah. But anyway, and it would for the better to help people. But it was like, so I just, whatever. I was like, I'm just going to learn everything, figure it out. But then that's when I started researching facilities, and I found the Hatchery.
Okay.
And so what I loved about them was they had a class, they could teach me everything, they could help me with the licensing.
Amazing.
So I really was like, cool, that's what I'm going to do. I did a virtual tour at the time and was like, this facility looks great.
Yeah.
They had a shared kitchen. Every iteration, I think if you do it with like what feels like a little bit lower risk, Ooh. Like we didn't jump into a private space.
No.
I was like, cool, we can pay by the hour. I can learn how to use a giant mixer instead of my hand. Like stuff that you can take the baby steps. It makes it more digestible.
Well, I know it's shared, but like, are you oftentimes there at the same time as other startups?
It depends.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm also kind of like, I'm okay with odd hours. So we would do really early or we would do like later. And if you're not the prime middle of the day hours, it's usually you can
you're not going to
be by yourself. Yeah.
Okay.
And so it kind of depended. Holidays are always the busiest, you know, at the time. And but it really wasn't like you were falling over people at all.
No.
And even still, I think it gets busy in there, but it's not.
I think that my first guest that came from the hatchery is Shiley Oil.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Totally.
Was I can't even think of Funeral Potatoes.
Yeah.
Are they at the hatchery?
I know them, but I don't believe they were there.
Oh,
They
okay.
might have been, but I also.
What about 5 Squared Pizza?
They were. Hold on. They were there.
'Cause I feel like I picked up from them around the hatchery.
They were. Yeah. They were there. And then they left, I think maybe right when I started.
Isn't that, and seeing that journey, I'm just like, what's possible now?
Totally. I mean, it gives you a vision too,
Yeah.
you know, of what's possible and how you can do it. I mean, Justice Up the Pies was in there and for a long time, and seeing her grow into her own space. Yeah. I mean, definitely. It gives you, it's like you have like a little bit of bumpers to start, and then as you grow, you can keep moving and doing the next phase.
Yeah.
So.
Around that time, were you still in mason jars? Was it still called Kesler Krisps?
Oh, you are so good. No, I quickly was like, Kesler's my last name.
Yeah.
It wasn't Carolyn, my grandma's.
Okay.
So I was like, it doesn't fit as much. And so I was like, we're going to name it after her, because that just, you know, that's more an honor, which it is meant to be.
And so how close were you to Miss Carolyn? Did you guys live sometimes in the same home or down the block? Or
Not same house. So we all were in North Carolina.
Okay.
They were probably about like 40 minutes away, but I mean, we went there almost every weekend, like every holiday. We spent a lot of time.
Yeah.
With my family was a
yeah.
little bit all over, but like they were the grandparents that were closest.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
totally.
not only would she just make them, but you would make them with her.
Oh, totally. The
Amazing.
holidays, yeah, like special events. And
Would she do other flavors? I think was cheddar the main.
that's the
flavor?
original. That's
Okay.
like the OG. No, that was what she did.
That was what she did.
Yeah.
Wow. So you've
Yeah.
quickly
We've really,
you're
like-
out there.
Got a lot. That's like where the creativity, like the fun for me comes into.
Oh,
it.
so cool. And then on the page, social media page, people have incorporated this into other snacks as well.
Yeah.
And you also collab with Pretty Cool Ice Cream.
Yeah,
With the peanut butter cheddar.
Totally.
pop.
Yeah. I actually would love to have some more of those, because that was so good. It tasted like their inspiration was the like those Lance crackers that, like, growing up, they had the peanut butter in the middle and they were like bright orange on the outside.
Not familiar.
So some people were like, peanut butter, cheddar ice cream, like what? But it worked. It works.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So my last guest makes handmade ice cream.
Nice.
And but I see a potential I don't know. I feel like it could happen if you got her name's Sarah Cochran.
Yeah.
But so tell me, like, how was the journey into Hatchery? What were what were the logical next steps? Was it getting into retail? Was it still farmers markets? Was it still straight to consumer? Like, where was your head at with that?
So it was really, we got to figure out how to like make these larger scale, more than me doing one pan at a time in my apartment at the time. I would literally bake for like 15 hours straight.
Oh my gosh.
One pan. And then my friend was like, why don't you get a bigger pan? I was like, oh, that's a good idea. Like, what? Like, cool, good. Magic. Got it. The little like mixers on top, because I was doing it by my hand for so long. I bought one from Costco finally.
Wow.
And it was like $300 and I was so scared. I was like,
yeah. Investing into yourself, right?
Yeah, it's hard for sure. But yeah, so starting the shared kitchen, I was like, we're just going to do as many events as I can do.
Okay.
And I knew events that I loved, like I love Renegade,
Yes.
like farmers markets. I was like really getting in the community and getting feedback. That was important to me, to be like, I know it makes sense, but doesn't make sense to everybody else of like what we're doing. And then just really getting our name out there. And I always knew we wanted to do retail, but I just didn't know how. Honestly, I was like, it's such a foreign concept to me. But yeah, so that was how I started. Like I don't even know how many events we did in the first 6 months, but I remember our first one was at Orkanoy. They had a
It's like a coffee shop?
It was a brewery.
Oh, brewery.
They were at the Kimball Arts Center.
Yeah. I used to get my dog food around there.
Yeah.
For dog's sake.
So they had a Midsummer Fest. That's what it was called. And that was our first event ever in the public, and we sold out.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, this is something. This is great. And then, I think I maybe did 60 events in 6 months.
Wow.
It was that's 10 events. Yeah, 10 events a month probably. And then
by yourself?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my friends are so supportive and would come with me to the kitchen. Shout out to my friend Matt. He's the OG, Krisps man. He has been there through the whole thing with me.
Your parents would help out too?
My parents would come.
Yeah.
Papa Chris. Yeah. People know him. He would fly down and come to Renegade. My sister.
Oh my goodness.
Everyone just jumped in when I needed, the amount of times I'm texting hey, do you want to come to the kitchen? And they're sure. Really?
Awesome.
And then, I think it was Andale was our first retailer, wholesale.
Yeah.
So,
and did Mia find you at one of these pop-ups or markets? Or?
We did. How did it work? They had it was a snack contest every year that they do. And so they have a little back patio and they invite people in and you can apply. And then they say you got in. I think there was 6 or 7 of us, and people tried everything and voted. So it's all their employees, the customers.
Oh, cool.
Which is really a cool way to crowdsource what you're curating.
Yeah.
So I think we actually got second place, but they brought us in too.
Oh, great.
And it was the beginning of an awesome
win-win.
Really cool relationship with them.
Oh, wow.
So,
and you're at Here as well?
Yeah. They were one of the first, when they actually launched about the same time as us. So we've been on their platform for a while.
And what did I'm sure you learned many lessons from those relationships, but are pitches to larger retailers a little bit more stakes or pressure for that?
Yeah, I think it's a longer game.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to get a hold of the right person. Mm-hmm. You got, they want to make sure. I mean, I understand too. If it's a multi-chain retailer, they're going to want to understand, can you handle everything?
Sure.
They're going to be investing in terms of shelf space and what they are offering, and then can you handle even the financial of you have to do certain types of advertising, marketing, sales
on your behalf.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean,
because some retailers share that responsibility too.
I think I've really gotten. I think what now is actually beautiful within the CPG world is this startup, companies want to support more startup younger brands. Yeah. So, Mariano's we just launched in.
Very
and
cool.
They have the startup, thing that they do every year, and that was how we got in.
Nice.
So we pitched to them through that. Sunset Foods just did something a contest type situation.
Is that in Chicago?
Yeah, they're
Sunset
up north.
Foods.
So it's
Okay.
North and west suburbs.
Okay.
They have 5 locations total.
Okay.
But they do something like that too. So I've tried to take any of those opportunities I can get and jump on them. And then being women-owned certified, it also helps a little bit with...
Is a women-owned certified?
Mm-hmm,
Is that... So there's a licensing body or certification body that does that for you? Oh, interesting.
For a long time, I was like, do I really have to prove that
right?
but it helps?
Yeah. Oh, and you got to pay for it. Oh.
I mean, shout out Target did help pay for it. But...
Okay.
But it does. I mean, there's these things called slotting fees that people charge you to even take a shelf space sometimes. But if you have the certification, they will waive it.
Oh.
I mean, it is. I can go deep on that. That could be a whole nother show, to be honest.
Well, what are the different deal options? Let's specifically say financing. Like, what are the different options available to someone wanting to gain shelf space?
So you can do debt financing. You can take a PO to a bank and be like, hey, I have a PO for Whole Foods. Can you front me the money?
So you can start production?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because you got to buy all those ingredients.
Yes.
And if you're not getting paid
it's coming out of pocket.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
Wow.
So
it's cool that the banks are even available to do that, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we've really gotten, I apply as many grants as I can get, stuff like that. So you have a a buffer.
Is that easy to search for all these opportunities? Like it seems like you've had a handful of opportunities along the way, but are they like, is there a hub for these things, or do you just know, or like is it the network that is like, hey, there's this opportunity, there's that opportunity? Where have these opportunities been coming from?
It's a little bit of everything.
Okay.
Like, the Hatchery is really good at, if they know of stuff coming, they put it in their newsletter. I get a lot of different emails from like, I can't remember any names right now, sorry. But like, I think female founders is one of them. And like, they have a list. Hello Alice, there's quite a few that will put together lists. So I try to make sure I'm just on those emails to like find them. But yeah, no, it takes time. That's a lot. I mean, I kind of got at the end of last year, I was like, I'm a little tired of like applications and I just need a break. Like, that's okay.
Yeah.
So,
and with time and a good product or service, word of mouth seems to reign supreme.
Yeah.
And I remember all the support a lot of the businesses got after Foxtrot kind of disappeared, and people were just curious on how to support, and it's just tell your local retailers about us or buy a pack here and there. And no matter the ranking on Google or how good you're at social media, it's like if you have something great on your hands, I think people will shout from the rooftops about it.
Yeah, it means a lot. I mean, it really does, and it's helped us grow substantially. And I mean, the amount of times I'll be at events or like doing a demo at a store and someone comes up to me and they're like, oh my gosh, my like daughter just brought these home and now I buy them, or like my friend brought them to a party. Like that is like, wow, like you really like see that, like the expansion. But then I think, the more you grow, you're like, how do we keep replicating that?
Yeah.
And I think that's what I'm trying to figure out now is
how do you not lose the charm?
Yeah. And stay like true to yourself. But we want to, I have kind of taken the path of, we started with Andale, who's an awesome independent retailer, right? And then we've gotten into some other like independent stores and chains, but now we're doing a lot of independent retailers in different states.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of this similar, like people go there, they want to see what's new. I've gotten to know the owners of those businesses.
Yeah.
So it starts to trickle out that way too.
Yeah.
And then, you just hope the more like multi-store chains you get into, the more people will be like, oh, I know them and I want to support them too.
Sure. So. Yeah. I mean, how did you get into it? Was it just friends in New York and DC that you made it out there?
Yeah. Like I've done some trade shows.
Okay.
The Hatchery's also been great for that. Like they offer discounted booths for certain shows that they have partnerships with. So this year I've decided we're taking a break from trade shows just to focus a little bit.
Gotta pick your battles.
Yeah, you can't do it all for sure, which is what I like to do it all. You just can't though.
Well, at what point would it be worth your while to bring on, someone that can manage a booth?
I'm trying.
And as I've heard from many other startups in the CPG space, it's like how do you find someone as invigorated about your product or service as much as you are? And the answer that I got is typically leaning on long-term consumers, like people that have just been fans of your work.
Totally. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, it's so true though, because it is hard to find someone that's going to sell your product or sample it
or
with the same excitement.
Well. Yeah.
And get, and it's, those events are grueling sometimes. Like they're long days, you're on your feet a lot, or if you're in the grocery store, you get a lot of no's. You just got to be okay with it.
I love that video of the snack dealer video. And you're like, no, oh no. And then, damn.
Andersonville was the hardest one.
That was Andersonville?
Yeah.
Oh, come on, Andersonville.
Yeah. But I think it's because you get more people.
Was it cold out? I don't know.
It was a little chilly.
Okay.
But I think Andersonville also has a few more organizations out on the street, like handing out things.
There are.
And so I think people were just automatically in a no.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was very funny. I was like, and then we're like, well, let's go to the dispensary down the street.
You don't want to try this? Yeah, that would be it.
We did. Oh, okay. That's what we did. And then I remember the security guard came out and she was like, she thought we were giving out like weed.
Oh, okay.
And I was like,
competition.
Oh. Yeah, I was like, no. I was like, I got snacks.
Do you want one?
Yeah. And she's like, okay, yeah. And then she sent everybody out there that worked there. It was awesome. It was so fun.
I love that. when we talked about charm, I do want to know more about the essence of Carolyn.
Yeah.
So we started talking about how much time you would spend together, but I guess like what were some fond memories of Carolyn, and how can we relay that in these Krisps?
I mean, she was so like community oriented.
Okay.
And that drives almost everything I do with Carolyn's Krisps. She was involved. She volunteered. Like even her neighbors, like they would always drop stuff off for each other, like look after each other. They looked after her as her and my grandfather got older. Like, and she was really good at like keeping in touch because they were from West Virginia. And my family and my parents ended up moving to North Carolina for work. And then they ended up kind of making the move down.
But that culture carried forward into North Carolina.
Yeah, for sure.
Why is it so hard to find that these days?
I know. It's the internet.
To be neighborly.
Yeah, I know. That is one thing about Andersonville. Like I don't know. I see the same people. You talk to them. It feels a little more friendly, like very friendly.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I do think people tend to keep to themselves more.
You think that would have happened after the pandemic?
Yeah.
It's like we need each other.
Totally. Yeah. But it kind of went back to normal. I don't know.
It's easy to forget.
It is. I mean, it was also traumatic, like at the same time.
Yeah. So maybe you want to forget. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I agree. It is. And I think that back to doing those events that we do and the stuff out in the public, like I just love it. And that is, I think, why it brings a lot that maybe we don't get in our normal daily lives.
Yeah.
Like that you get the conversations.
Whether it's at a little party that you're hosting and people are surrounding this like countertop with these. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Which is why kind of big announcement.
Yeah.
I haven't signed the paperwork, but it's happening. We're opening a storefront for 6 months.
Oh my goodness. Chicago?
This year. It's in Chicago.
Woo! This will probably take me 2 weeks anyway to put out. So I'm not sure when that's going to be official, but what else can you, like, is it North Side, South Side, Andersonville? Like where?
It'll be in Westtown.
Westtown. Okay.
Yeah. They have their Chamber of Commerce has a great, like a program that you can do pop-ups, but they're long-term.
Wow.
And we're going to be the first food one that they've done.
You're not sharing it? Mm-mm. What? Mm-hmm. That's amazing.
So it's going to be a pickup spot. We're going to do some really like open to the public events, limited edition flavors, collabs.
Amazing.
Like, I can't wait.
Amazing. What? How do you envision the opening day?
I just want everyone there like snacking, having a good time, good music. Just like I always love creating spaces where people can come, and this is why I love food, is like a connector, and it breaks a lot of those communication like barriers.
Absolutely.
Like you can try something like, oh, this is good, and the next person like, oh, I know, this is really good, Like it's just an easy way to communicate instead of like being like, what are we going to talk about? I don't know. So I mean, I used to do a lot of, when I would do my art shows, it was all about getting people to communicate.
Yeah.
So I would do interactive stitch boards. Like I would do all these things that people could normally do without thinking about it. Mm-hmm. And like, I mean, I like going to different like mixers and stuff, but sometimes when it's like you have a name tag and
100%.
like it just feels awkward.
It
sometimes.
does, yeah.
It's not the most welcoming.
Yeah.
And so I'm all about creating some different ways for people to talk and communicate.
And so is it also like a certain number of people? Is there a perfect number of people?
That's a good question.
And with that, like as we already mentioned, like navigating a retail store, like that Wayfinder type thing, like putting either signs or activities along the way, activations, like things like that.
Totally. I mean, it's a small space, so it's not big, but I think I also like the idea of this is how I plan my birthday every year, whatever. But like this idea of like the ebb and flow of a crowd. Yeah. So people can come whenever. So if it gets really crowded, great. And if it's, like, and when you get there, you still feel warm and welcome. So I don't know if I have like a number of people I'd want, but this idea of you're kind of walking in this space and just feel very like happy and welcome to be there. And you can hang out however long you want. And then you can leave. And then people can just like.
And how much of it is being a good, like just a good host or facilitator?
I mean, I think that's a lot of it. I think it's a vibe, right? Like you're setting an experience. I mean, like think about any restaurant you've been to, right? Like you want to feel like it could be any vibe though, it could be super warm, welcoming, but then it could also be like, we're here to serve you this, but like it's going to be really good and you're going to be real close to other people, but it's still an experience.
Are you familiar with the deli or the Italian place sandwich shop Fontano's? No, Fontano's. It's right behind UIC's library, so it's in the area. And before they had like a small fire in the building, and before that fire, you were elbow to elbow with other people getting lunch. And post fire, there was more room. So not that it's the food hasn't changed, but I wonder if you've lost some of that charm, the vibe, right?
Yeah, totally.
It's very cool to hear, especially with your art direction background, trying your best to facilitate obviously immaculate positive vibes, but like an environment where you might not even need to connect people, where solely due to the shared space, people feel vulnerable enough or open enough to say hi.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah. And I think that if you can... Yeah, I think it is about the vibe, at the end of the day. And if people can feel just comfortable in some way, even a little bit, then that opens up a lot of conversation. And
is there anything you want to say about your flavor that you're launching in that space?
Oh, we got a lot going on. I'm not ready to officially say anything, but it's going to be good.
I didn't know you had things like bark. I don't see this at Agora.
No, so we only do those online right now in special events.
Okay.
Because one, there's a shelf life situation, just
sure.
like longevity is not quite as the same as our other traditional crisps. But we started this out of having broken crisps at the end of production.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, not sure what to do with them. It seemed wasteful. Like you can't just throw them away. And so we did a collaboration with Bartleby's.
Okay.
They have an ice cream scoop shop up north. And anyway, she was like dipping them in chocolate and putting them in her ice cream.
Oof.
And I was like, wow, that sounds good. And so then we were like, okay, but we could do a lot with like different flavors and different types of chocolate. And it's still that everything I do is it's nostalgia inspired. So I think that comfort comes in just from the flavors. And it's funny because I didn't expect this, but like the cross-cultural like nostalgia, like I've had so many people be like, this reminds me of something in the UK when I was visiting family there, or when I had someone who was like, I grew up in Africa and like there were like a snack we had. And I was like, really?
Was that unintentional?
It was nostalgia for me, but I never expected
in a different way.
The cross-cultural aspect, which I just find very cool. I think that also is a whole different level of connection.
Yes.
And because travel is so important to me, that is very cool. So, but anyway, so we took the crisps, we're dipping them in chocolate, and still it's another way of being creative, to be honest.
Absolutely.
And it uses a little bit different perspective of how the crisp can be used. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's like you're, as an entrepreneur, obviously like it can be very romantic and prestigious but people don't see the back end stuff. But at the end of the day, like I don't think there's any other way of life that allows you to be this creative.
Yeah.
And it's for your own thing. So it's like, despite it feeling like very like the hardest thing you've ever done, it's that much more rewarding.
Yeah, I agree. I remember hearing somebody say this on a different podcast, and it kind of like resonated with me. But it was like, I think when you're doing your own thing, the highs are real high and the lows can be real low.
Yeah.
Just because, it is, you can be surrounded by people, but it is all your own. Like you own it. But it's so much more rewarding.
Right.
And you feel like you can really make a difference, and you see it firsthand in a lot of ways.
Right.
And you have the autonomy to be as creative as you want. Sometimes I'm like, I just want to do it all at once, and I can't. That's okay.
Yeah.
So, no, I agree with that.
That's funny. I'm in a perpetual cycle of trying to get back to journaling. And I recently bought this like e-ink, it's a notepad called The Remarkable. And with journaling, if you commit to it, you can only write as fast as, or you can think as fast as you can write, right? So it forces you to slow down. And there is something to it of like getting your thoughts out on paper, either on paper or telling a close friend about it, of like manifestation type thing.
Totally.
Where has a lot of your inspiration been coming from? Are these shower thoughts, or are these like long walks, alone, or just travel, or
a little bit of everything, honestly. Yeah, I mean, it's either something I'm missing, like the pizza was our first savory one.
Okay.
Since launching, because the cheddar was the OG, and I was like, it's really hard to live up to the cheddar because it's our best seller. I didn't want to disappoint anybody, but I love pizza, and I, again, couldn't find something on the market that was like this pizza snack that I felt really excited about.
Okay.
So I was like, that's our next flavor. But a lot of it, it's like, could even be different, like ingredients that are seasonal, could be like, I have so many other ideas, and we're trying to figure out how to incorporate even more like kind of funky, fun flavors into the Krisps. And it, there's this whole science behind baking, and when you start doing that, and then even trying to get ingredients on a large scale for manufacturing. But it kind of just, I don't know, like I'll taste something, I'm like, maybe it needs this, maybe it doesn't. But a lot of it I'm very much like with the flow of stuff. So if an idea comes up from being at a farmer's market, I'll write it down. Yeah. If you're on a walk, if you're traveling, you see a really interesting flavor profile. Like,
I'm sure consumers are telling you flavors, given some recs all the time.
Yeah, I have a whole spreadsheet of like great ideas. They're all great.
Have you and your parents ever talked about what Grandma Carolyn might have thought about some of these flavors?
I know. It was my mom's mom. So she's, I think she would be very excited, and I think the idea of the nostalgia of like things we grew up with. So like the cinnamon, like I grew up with, it's not just like a cinnamon sugar cookie to me. We always had, like, even with Granny Carolyn, was like bread toasted with butter and cinnamon sugar on top. Like that was what we ate for breakfast. And so that is very much my childhood, you know? So it's all very intertwined as you go. Yeah.
That's interesting. Are you trying to, you also made a post recently about giving back to the LA, to the community in LA.
Totally.
That's something that it rings true with you as well as Grandma Carolyn as well. Just like,
Yeah, just supporting, and I think now I feel like there's a platform that I have and a product that can help. And, if we can spread a word in any small amount, like I think she was always a very determined woman. Yeah. I remember hearing the story about, it was like a secretary school back then. So her and her sister got on a train, went, I don't exactly remember where, they went on this train ride, went to the school, and she was always like, I might not be the smartest in the room, but I can always figure it out. And so like very determined and always wanting to help. And so I've kind of taken, that same mantra and being like, how can we give back? So being from North Carolina, we did a fundraiser last year with Hurricane Helene. And raised, it was like $1,400 that we got to send to them to help with some humanitarian aid. And then, we just launched our LA snack fundraiser. So, watching everything unravel is just, it's like gut wrenching. And we were going to launch another sale for January, and I was like, it just didn't feel right. And I was like, okay, how can we just turn this into something good where we can match any donations with product and like we can send a little bit of comfort to those in need right now. So that was really the thought behind that.
Through this entire journey, because we are not our work, how have you been able to maintain some relationship with yourself?
Journaling.
Okay.
I journal a lot.
Yeah.
I think that first year, I was so deep into all of this that I remember at one point after the holidays, like the first full year, it was in like January, February, I was just dead. Like I was like going through the motions, like still producing every day, and I was still fully doing the production, and it just like I just wasn't my full self. Yeah. And I had to really listen to that and be like, okay, this is important to you, but you got to take care of yourself. And I mean, therapists help with that, working out, eating well, journaling, trying to do art. I wish I did more of it right now, but like things that like are still inspiring, and trying to just be okay with taking that time. And like, I usually take a trip a year if I can. And I was like, okay, then I'm going to try to keep my trip, you know? And
yeah. I mean, it's tough, especially if this is your livelihood as well.
Yeah.
Like how, if this is giving you the ability to pay bills, but it's like draining you at this point, how do you, it's like, how do you balance that? Or even like you mentioned boyfriend earlier. It's just like relationships, like and relationships, even like with your parents or with friends or a partner. It's tough to juggle. And what do you feel like you're sacrificing at these days?
I know. I think I've tried to get really like not good, but like better at like picking like my yeses and nos.
Yeah.
And being like, okay, I am more of a yes person than I am a no person,
Sure.
let's be honest.
Yeah.
But being like, okay, it's okay if I say no to this because I need to focus on something else.
Right.
And really, I've gotten better at being like, okay, here's my priority today and here's my priority this week. And you can only do what else, that might fit into that, but you can't really get too far off the path.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's like things that you want to be able to go to. Like I remember one of my really good friends, they were getting married, but I had already committed to going to a trade show in New York. And I mean, I put down thousands of dollars and I had to go to the trade show. Like, and I actually saw pictures recently and I was like, oh man, that was a tough one. You know, like those big moments are like the hard, but I just try not to, I try not to miss them when I can. And I don't know. I feel like the people who really love you and
Would
they
understand,
know and
it's not like you're never going to not have dinner again.
Yeah. I know. This also happens like adulting, whether you're an entrepreneur or not, but like building families, right? I have friends with multiple kids at this point, and we were trying to figure out dinner and she's like, what about like January 15th? And this was like in December. And I was like, okay, cool. Like I'll put it in the calendar, like I guess we're there, but at least we're going to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just, you also not being so hard on yourself sometimes. Like I think that can be even more like tough to be like, there's a balance of opening that space and time for people and keeping those relationships close, but then being like, sometimes I really do need to focus and do this. And
it comes in waves.
It does.
Yeah. And if the wave is coming, you got to ride it.
Yeah. I mean, last year I was like life for me hard.
Okay.
Like I became an auntie. I have a nephew now. I moved in with my partner. Like, there was just a lot of things that I think I hadn't made time for in the few years prior, and nothing fell apart. And we're still doing, like, we're still on the up, so, and I might be a better person for it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, so it's not, and people are different, I think it's different personalities too, but that's at least how I felt last year, was like,
sure.
Lifed. Yeah.
Also as a creative and an entrepreneur, like, we probably have like a million things going on in our head at the same time, and journaling does help with that. Are there any other projects you wish you could be starting at the same time that you've committed to this and you're like, maybe later, but in your head, it's like, is there anything else you want to like put out there?
So Fluorescent City was like my other baby, which was my art baby. And, it was a mix of like clothing and textiles with painting. And the whole purpose was bringing brightness to the world through art. As I went through kind of my own journey of like learning about myself. And that has taken a pretty like
backseat.
Yeah, for sure. And that's okay, but I miss it. And so it's like trying to slowly do things with it.
Yeah.
That's kind of one of my resolutions this year. Goals is to be like, do a little project here and there. Because there is also this space where like, I think when you kind of can find that flow, the more ideas come in other capacities.
Yeah.
But I think at a point art got very stressful for me. It was like you're not selling your soul, but you're like very out there, you know, like I was really doing pieces that were very personal and selling them, and it was like kind of wearing on me,
sure,
to an extent. And I think I needed a break when I needed it.
But it's interesting. It's like, how would you have felt if, like, as the struggling artist that has pieces that don't sell? It's like, why aren't people buying my pieces? It's like you're gonna feel some type of way either way. I think.
I agree. I know. I totally agree. I think I needed the Krisps.
Oh wow. Okay.
I do. I think I needed them to teach me about business, about building a brand that's my own, about myself. I mean, as much as I'm learning, they're teaching me too. Yeah.
Vice versa, huh? Mm-hmm. That's so cool. Mm-hmm. That's so cool. Going back to the Foxtrot debacle, did they reach back out to you after they got back on their feet?
They did. Yeah.
Did they settle their debts?
No.
Yeah. So I mean, like, how do you move forward? So I'm guessing they wanted you back on the shelves.
They did.
Yeah. And so how do you get back to zero? You know, how do you get back to, like, how do we start on a good foot?
Mm-hmm. I have a lot of thoughts about this.
I mean, please don't hold back. It's interesting because another friend, Kyoto Black, is back in there.
Mm-hmm. I saw that. Yeah. It was a tough decision. Business wise, right?
Yeah.
I had to.
It's not personal.
No, yeah, and I had to think about. There's two sides to it, right? There is the community side that they screwed over a lot of people.
Yeah,
they lost vision, because they were venture backed. I think they got greedy, to be honest.
So scaling faster than they can handle.
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah, and. You know, the way they shut down, the way it was so abrupt, and it just, companies actually do this all the time. Theirs was just very public and very obscure because it was in the middle of the day and you're kicking customers out. But the process, the loophole of companies going bankrupt, clearing their debt and reopening is not a new concept.
That was a little shady. Yeah. But due to that, how public it was.
Yeah.
People finally got insight into the inner workings of how a company can get back on its feet.
Totally.
Yeah.
And they were willing to so they built themselves off of being like community, building small brand, like helping small brands get a platform. You know, they didn't charge crazy fees like some of the other retailers did or could. But then they were okay with tearing all that down with them, which is like what really hit me hard. Cause I was like, you know, then what are you? You know, like don't act like you're one thing and then do this other.
If you were in their shoes and you know, let's say you still had that goal of scaling and you found yourself in a position to have to shut down, is the right answer in the messaging and how you shut down? Like if shutting down is inevitable? Yeah.
I would never want to be in their shoes. Like, I know that's not easy, but I do think there is like a tact that you do it with. I think there's a process. They also broke a federal law. Like, let's not be like the Warren Act. Like, if you have a certain number of employees, you have to give them a certain amount of notice, and they did not do that.
So did the employees win that lawsuit?
I actually don't know.
Yeah, I didn't see headlines for that.
Yeah, I did see somehow they were going after the new business to pay the back debt. But I should do it.
Very interesting. More.
Yeah. But yeah, I just think that sure, there's more tact. I think, I don't know how that conversation went with them.
Well, I wonder if any other independent retailers have had their own conversations to not find themselves in those situations.
True. Yeah. And I think it's back to the money for like the way it looks like for them is, you know, you were scaling so fast. They were going to open like 50 stores. Like, that's aggressive.
Yeah.
And they're opening in high rent places where they are only renting. They're not buying. And I just think it was like, they just didn't, they got greedy at the end of the day. Like they were I'm sure they had a lot of pressure from some like investors, but anyway, but I think my biggest issue is the way they came back. And it's because back to the community side. And I told them this. I said, you're going to come back. Fine. Do whatever you want. But you guys need to build the community back up. And I had very specific questions of like, you know, what's your PR strategy? How are you going to get everybody back on board? How are you going to get the community back on board? And the response was, we're just going to highlight the small brands. It's not about us. And I took that as like, okay, so you want us to be your spokespeople. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, I was like, I can't hype you up if you're not going to like deal with your own shit.
Okay. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I based off of the comments still happening on their social media, the feedback from the community, like it didn't help them.
No. What would you say the percentage is positive, negative? Or let's say negative and apathetic. Like there's people that are oblivious to the debacle and they're like, yay, Foxtrot is back. And then there are people obviously more community minded and they're like, you fucked over all these vendors and your employees. You know, like I'm never coming back. Yeah. And so is it like 75-25 or you think it's 80-20?
I'd say it's probably 70. Yeah. 30.
Because there's still, the ones that came back there are still up, right? So like they're not closed. So
yeah, I mean, I think, and it's interesting. I've had lots of conversations with different sides of this story, you know, and I've had people who are friends of the owner, and like are like it wasn't his fault. I've had people who worked in corporate who saw the writing on the wall way before this actually happened. I've talked to consumers who have zero idea of what really happened. And I am, you know, they're like, oh, I wish I could buy you in Foxtrot still, you know, like I go and I'm like, okay, but like, you understand why we're not there. Right. You know, like, right. And they don't. And right. And I think that's also like a weird thing of, social media and how you get in bubbles.
Oh yeah. Echo chambers. Yeah.
And how, I was in a very specific bubble because of what happened to us and what we did. And there's people that probably saw none of that, you know, like it's just very interesting. So I don't know. I think, there's still people going there. I have heard, through the grapevine that they're already late on payments for certain people. I have and I say this, like, I don't have like the numbers, you know, but like when they asked us back, they were not going to pay us back any of like the amount. They did say that they would sell the product they had on shelf and we could get paid for that or something. Like it was something weird like that. And they tallied up what was available for, I think, 3 stores. And it was like a very small percentage of what they owed us. And, you know, I was like, I just don't feel comfortable. And like, also like to jump back in with them is risky. You know, it's like, fine. Like, no one knows how this is going to pan out at the end of the day. And it's another risk. And you guys aren't really offering me anything that makes me feel comfortable. And you also never really apologized at the end of the day. At the end, like in any capacity. It was all like, oh, we're new. Nope, it's different, you know. But I mean, whatever.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and like, I don't blame anyone for going back with them. I think I understand the business. I know it left holes for us in certain neighborhoods, but that's why we're, you know, like the Mariano's launch is really important. That's going to fill a lot of that. Yeah. And trying to get in other retailers, like we quickly got picked up by a local DSD distributor. And
wow, okay.
They helped us get into like the West Loop and like South Loop markets and stuff like that to start filling some holes. Okay. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, it's a thing.
Do you feel like you're in a transition period? Like, you don't have a co-packer yet, right?
No, we manufacture everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So is that the logical next step?
Yeah, it is. I think that is where my head is trying to process and learn. It's expensive.
Yeah. That's so the bottleneck is finance then is financial backing.
Yeah.
To get to that level.
Yeah.
And but in order to get to, or unless Mariano's is like, we'll start you out in a certain number of stores, and if it goes, we can talk about expansion.
Totally. Which is what we did, which is fine. And I'd rather do that, you know, because instead of going too many stores too fast and then getting pulled back out of stores. Like you never.
There's definitely a different demographic, and there's overlap with people that shop at places like Andale, L&M, Agora, and then people that go to Mariano's, and different places have different levels of credibility and things like that.
Totally.
It's very reassuring to find yourselves at places like Mariano's, Fresh Time.
Yeah. I mean, I think when you get to scale, but I think that's where, so after the Foxtrot situation, like what was screaming to me was just like diversity in terms of how we grow.
Okay.
And not putting all of our eggs in a basket.
Okay.
And so that's why I'm excited to test out the storefront.
Okay.
We have our online sales normally that we can ship anywhere. And then we have retail. And then we also do food service. So we do some like more by the pound type.
Oh, okay. It's like catering in a way, or?
Yeah, like you buy it for like catering. We do like little snack packs for like grab and go for like colleges, stuff like that. So trying to diversify, but still keep, you can't do, again, too many different things at once, you know, but I think there is, retail's it's a difficult game at the end of the day. And being successful takes time. And so I'm okay with taking that a little slower.
I think is Polita's in the market for co-packing, I think. Last time we talked, she was like, that was her next meeting.
She's out of the Hatchery. Yeah. Yeah. So I think I've gotten some numbers. I'm reaching out to some other like co-packers. Our process is very specific and takes very specific equipment that is custom.
Sure. So
you're also paying for that up front.
Wow.
So, you know, I love our production team now, and I love seeing them grow and them being a part of it. So I'm trying to figure out.
It's funny because there was probably a point where like, who would want to help me in the kitchen with this?
Like by myself 24 hours. Like what? You walk out of the kitchen, you're like in a daze with like dough all over you. Like what?
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah,
how perspectives change.
Totally. That was a big shift for me because I like to be so hands-on, but I was in the kitchen so often and doing so many events, and I just couldn't do it all. And I was like, I just need someone I really trust, and you're giving someone your recipe to like remake what you're doing, and that was a big step. And I learned a lot through that process.
Oh my goodness.
But now we had December was our biggest month yet in business, and it was great.
Because these are great gifts, or
great gifts,
or just holiday parties.
I mean, a little bit of everything. I think we just are in a lot more retailers too. So we had a lot more wholesale, a lot more corporate gifting.
Okay.
And then our events, like we've incrementally increased every time even if it's the same event, but more people are finding us.
Wow.
So we're just producing like crazy, and you know, like if I was doing it, like that wouldn't be possible. But it was just so seamless. Like it wasn't easy, but it was like our team. I was like, man, like it showed me a lot about where we're at. And I don't know. Again, it's like the people part of me that really likes to see that and be like, oh, we built this.
Oh, heck yeah.
So, you know, when you go to a co-manufacturer, how do I keep our quality and still the aspect of people in the business?
Do co-packers have their own distribution network, or is that separate?
That is, so they will, so the manufacturer, hopefully they would do both. So they'd manufacture it and then pack it up for you. Mm-hmm. And I think you can possibly have a distributor pick it up, but more likely they're just shipping the pallet of product to you, and then you store it till
so you have to pay for storage is separate too. So you have to pay for storage somewhere then.
Yeah, totally. So I have friends who have just warehouses for just their product.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, when it's ready, then you just ship it out.
You probably know the friends that Remember.
Yeah.
They're
doing good stuff.
Jack, Jeff,
everywhere.
Yeah. So wow, that's a lot of things you got to like line up. Like, what is the priority in that? Is it lining up a retailer and then getting distribution and then getting manufacturing? It's like, do you work backwards, or like?
I know. It's a little bit of both. You know, I think some people, it just depends. Some people find the retailer and then they go find a co-man.
Yeah.
Or you know your numbers of like, okay, if we get this much product made, this is how long it'll take us to get through it based off of what I know. And then you can do it that way. I think it just depends. Like, same with like, it's funny, retailers too, they're like, not no one, but people are nervous about taking a chance on a new brand sometimes. And you got to have proof it's like being an intern,
concept,
right? Like
yeah.
trying to get a job after school. Like they're like,
Yeah.
you need experience.
So
but
what do you usually showcase when they're asking for proof?
We'll show data from website, events, other like even independent retailers.
Yeah.
We can show cadence.
Okay.
So they want to see traction.
Yeah.
So if you can prove that in any form, then.
As I've gotten older, I don't know if you feel the same. I'm trying to not work less per se, but trade less time for money.
Yeah.
I don't want to be tied. I don't want my revenue to be tied to a certain amount of time I have to put in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're building something to get to that level. But is that something you think about and that you try to implement into the cost of goods?
Yeah, I mean.
How do you buy back your time?
How do you buy back your time? I think it's to the point, I think it goes down to streamlining, right? Like, and how do you do more with spending less of your time on it? Which for me is really just looking at all of our processes right now and being like, okay, what can be better? What can be faster? You know, usually when you start out, you're not going to be the fastest you're ever going to be, right? So the more you do it, the better you get. And I think kind of what I was getting at with our like December this past year was, you know, maybe in the past years before we couldn't have even done those numbers because we weren't prepared or we didn't even have the like know-how at the time. But yeah, I think it's really just like streamlining where you can. And for me, it's having a very clear plan or trying to have as much of a plan as I can, which ebbs and flows as you go. But just, yeah, making sure and like understanding where I'm like kind of wasting time, you know, like in some capacities, like maybe I don't need to do this or maybe I could outsource this to someone to do the like the bookkeeping. Now it's like a big thing. Like it's not my forte, to be honest. So it's like I can have someone else do that for me. Sure. And so I don't need to spend my hours doing it. Right. It's like time is money, right?
It is. And it's balancing that with spending time with your loved ones.
Totally.
Yeah. Like that's invaluable. That's priceless, right? Yeah. So it's like we don't put an hourly rate on stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree.
Is there anything else we haven't talked about, Amie? What's like things that have been on your mind that we didn't get to touch on?
Man, we touched on a lot.
I don't want this to scare you, but like personally with a storefront, if I just had, I'd be scared with just having, despite having so many flavors, just having Krisps. I'm scared.
You're scared?
I'm like,
for me?
Yeah, I'm scared. I don't know if that scares you, but it's just like I guess like, do I have enough? Like, is there enough here?
I think because, so we will have some like other complementary products.
Cool. Okay.
That will be, and I'm still fleshing a little bit of this out, but like the idea of people do these on charcuterie boards. Could I have some really cool snack trays that you would buy with those? Right?
Yeah.
Or like things you could potentially put together that would make, you know, some sort of entertaining board.
Okay.
Or a lot, I mean, I'm excited because it'll give us a little bit of a platform from those collaborations.
Yeah, 100%.
So like Bang Bang Pie, we've been working on stuff for a while.
Okay.
That's the one I can actually say
now.
Cool. But being able to like show the kind of synergy between other brands is what I also hope this will do. So it kind of brings like both of our customers together in an interesting way. So it'll be Krisps and there'll be some very like tight knit adjacent items.
Oh, very cool.
But yeah, and like I'm excited for the holidays. Like we have some limited edition like packaging products coming, and So,
okay.
I mean, it's always a little scary, but that's why you do it with like incrementally. Like I'm not buying a storefront,
right?
You know,
So it's a good trial run. With collaboration, like with Pretty Cool and Bang Bang, what makes it feel like seamless or limitless or just collaboration in general tends to feel good. How does it happen and why does it work?
Oh, I love that. I mean, I think for me, it's working with people and products you really like, you know? And so there's this really beautiful, like mutual respect. And like, especially with other small businesses that you guys both know the process. Like, you know, like you've kind of been like Bang Bang is very established, as is Pretty Cool, but they've been in the nitty gritty too.
Yeah.
And you kind of all like have the same thought of like anything's still possible.
And to get that validation from them is very reassuring. Mm-hmm. Like totally. they see you grinding in the mud.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're like, I want to collaborate with you. And it's just like, you do?
Really?
Yeah, it's very reassuring.
Yeah, totally.
And for someone as busy as they are, I mean, we're all busy too, but like to have the time or to make the time to put into this collaborative process can mean the world.
Mm-hmm, totally. And I think it's, it's fun to be able to think out of the box of like what you do every day.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think when collaborations, when it comes to that is part of it too. It gives you that little extra like magic touch.
It does.
And it's fun to bounce out. I think you can get very siloed in your own ideas too. Okay. So when there's someone else there, it really is, it's fun.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So.
Anything else, Amie?
I don't know. What are you working on?
Oh gosh, I already told you some of the stuff I'm working on. It's probably not ready to put out publicly.
Okay. What are you excited about? Maybe that's easier.
I think in general, similar to any entrepreneur, like excited to continue creating. And I've also gotten to the point of like, maybe you might not need to create from scratch, and it's like improving processes, streamlining. And I was gifted a book by Francis Almeida. I'm not sure. Do you know Francis from Side Practice? I
have never like met him one-on-one, but we have a lot of mutual contacts, and they picked up our Krisps for a short time with the Foxtrot when they were doing like
great. Okay.
Really like kind of like
they were helping
rotational.
Out. Oh, great.
Yeah. But him and I have actually never like met one-on-one, but I love everything that Side Practice is doing. And what he's doing.
And he's the king of side practices.
Yes.
And he recommended a book by Cody Sanchez, it's like Main Street Millionaire. And her main thing is collecting boring businesses that are resilient to things like the pandemic and a recession. So a storage unit, laundromats, things that people will need despite anything. So it's not flashy. You don't have to start something from scratch. But a lot of these businesses are probably owned by boomers, and they want to retire, and they might not have a child to give it to. And they probably have processes that can be improved upon, can be automated, can use some marketing, maybe some Google ranking. So that's kind of like what I've been reading about these days, but creating in general with the EMT class, it's improving the student experience, making sure those processes are streamlined. And I think as you get older, it's just making time for your own relationships. My wife, we're trying to start a family, things like that. So balancing all the things, right? And so if the current wave is trying to set yourself up for a co-man, then that's the wave, right?
Yeah, totally.
And you kind of submit to the process sometimes and fight your battles, like pick your heart, right?
Yeah, that's so true. And I think there's this push and pull of wanting to go fast and do it all, and then patience with entrepreneurship that I have been learning a lot of, and that you can't skip steps. Like you really do. I mean, you can figure out how to get there, but I don't know. Yeah, it's an internal learning.
To go full circle, now that you've been doing this, it's like, how would you change your art direction back in the day?
Oh, that's interesting. How would I change my art direction?
Things that you're probably doing for your own brand. It's like, what it's like, I could have been doing this, I should have been doing this for that brand back in the day.
Right, that's true. Huh. I mean, I'm trying to think. I don't even know if it's like a full change, because we were so like, even with that insure tech company, I was really a big proponent of like talking to our customers and getting them involved in our marketing. And I think I brought that over with this, was like, how do you get the customers involved so they feel a part of the brand? So maybe it would just be expanding on that idea, deeper throughout. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know.
How is that through? Is that social media? Is that like markets?
So we would do like, for the like pet insurance, we would do meetups, and we would actually also like where you could bring your dog.
Okay.
And like, or we would do open calls for models for dogs, like customer, like people and their dogs, and they could be a part of a campaign.
Okay.
So we did, things where you are ingrained in the actual like art itself.
Yeah.
So for like me, it's really getting people. I mean, I think like the snack dealer is another way of like being at
that was
like
genius.
On the street level. There's like like people videos when people send us videos of their like eating it for the first time, or like I'm always funny because like
what did I say? I saw the cheddar and the hummus, right?
Yeah,
that was good.
Those are good. Yeah, totally. So I think there's I don't know. There's something about which I think you're doing with your podcast is people are being seen, right? And I think we all, in our own aspect, want to be seen.
Yeah.
And so, however, we can all do more of that for each other.
Yeah, and it's like, well, who do you want to be seen by?
Good point.
Because social media comes and goes, and it's like I hate chasing this algorithm.
Totally. Yeah. Oh, I know. And then who knows, like TikTok might go away. Like I don't, it's just very. It's not even our control. But I think maybe seen is more like when I think that it's not necessarily. It's like related to, and I think like people like telling their story or just like having their story heard in a way, even if it's a one-on-one conversation, can be impactful.
Yes.
So, you could be the broader audience of the World Wide Web, or it could be, but
it's interesting. It's like we don't have time for coffee dates. And it's like, despite how much we know these can be impactful, it's like, how do you vet who you want to have coffee dates with? I don't know. It's just like,
Yeah, I know.
if we, like, I'm meeting up with two different individuals that are curious about the podcast setup.
Yeah.
And I just have the bandwidth to meet up with strangers.
Yeah.
But I know most people don't. And it's just like, I understand if you don't.
Yeah.
And,
but then you need to have time to work on the podcast,
yeah.
So
I know.
It's a balance.
Yeah, no, it is.
Yeah.
It is. If like the one thing I'm probably sacrificing that I'm doing a lot better at is probably my time with my wife.
Oh,
yeah,
that's great.
But she's been courageous enough to tell me.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. Communication.
Yeah.
Key.
Yeah. It's a work in progress.
Totally. Yeah.
Where can people find you if you want to be found?
Yeah. So Agora Market, as you mentioned, a great local market right by Bucktown, Logan Square area. I always say, go on our website, put your zip code in our store finder, find the store near you.
Okay.
So, we're in over 150 stores right now. A lot of those are in the Chicago area. Others are kind of, scattered throughout the U.S. But find us there, and if you can't find us in a store near you, then you can buy them online, and we'll ship them.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Amie, it was a pleasure.
Yeah.
You're killing it. You're crushing it. I know it doesn't feel like that sometimes, but you truly are crushing it. And it's just like with entrepreneurism or the journey, it's just like it's limitless. Limitless. So like we're very lucky to be able to do what we do, and if we remember that, despite how hard it can feel, it's reassuring that it's like choose your heart. A lot of things are actually in your control, and if it's truly not, then let go of it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I agree with that. Well, thank you for having me. Seriously, I'm honored for sure.
Everyone else, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, what's up, guys? Thanks for tuning in. If you like this video, you might even like this video. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe right here. I'll see you in the next one.